No, are you
No.
ready?
Yeah, just you guys can start whenever. I'm good.
3,
Okay, he's
2,
fine.
1. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Not Safe for Wonks. It is a really heated time in America. I think we are going through riots that have very little precedent in American history. I remember growing up as a kid and watching the Rodney King riots and feeling kind of amazed that so many people were so upset over one life. And as a child, I was born in 86, so I was 87, 88, 89, 90. I was 7 at the time. So I didn't understand that what we saw in Los Angeles in the early 90s wasn't about a single incident. It was about an entire boiling pot of incidents, of murders, of misconduct that led to that stage and led to that outpouring. And now we're seeing that at an unprecedented scale. We've got protests in Kennedy. You've been running a counter today in how many cities you've seen protests in. Do you know what that number is at your current count?
At the current count, I think it's around 106. I started this morning. I had personally, with the help of a friend, found around 78. And then we've been asking Twitter to tell us, are your cities protesting? Because we know that this is being massively underreported, that a lot of the mainstream media is still pushing the idea that this is like a few select urban areas.
Right.
And it's not at all. And so we're at around 106 cities that we've counted with protests so far. I'm guessing there have to be at least 150 individual protests going on since last night through today.
So given all of that, we're at just a totally unprecedented time. What do you say to people who feel like anyone running for Congress is not important right now? Our mayor, Keisha Bottoms, got on TV and got a lot of praise from the media for just telling people, hey, you've got to affect change in the right way by going out to vote. And I think it kind of rang hollow with people who have been voting for district attorneys, have been voting for mayors, have been voting for governors, have been voting for congressmen, and have just not, because the rot is so systemic that they feel like there's nothing they can get out of this. So you're going into like the red zone of your campaign. What do you tell people who feel disillusioned in a moment like this, who feel heartbroken, who don't feel like anything related to an election is important right now?
Well, first of all, I hear them. I hear them loud and clear. And with what's been going on for decades in our country, and this is not just limited to law enforcement and the extreme injustice that we saw this week with George Floyd, right? This is systemic challenges that Black people in America have been facing decade over decade over decade. We're talking about everything from harassment on a daily basis when you're pulled over for a ticket and then being searched for something else that has nothing to do with the reason that you've been pulled over. We're talking about people losing their jobs. We're talking about not good education being available in the Black parts of town, quote unquote. We're talking about people who can't get a decent loan and a decent rate for a mortgage. We're talking about Black families not being able to move in certain neighborhoods. This is not limited in any way, shape, or form to law enforcement. And people have the right and people have a reason to feel frustrated, because right now we have police departments across the country focused on how are they going to do crowd control, whereas the American people want to see what are the changes that are going to come out because of this. What are the changes that are going to happen to police departments across the country? What are police unions going to do to take action? What are we going to do for training policemen in our neighborhoods to act in a way that is appropriate with what is going on? These are the questions that people are asking, and people are wondering that, hey, even if I vote, what is the difference it's going to make in my city, in my country, in my state? Are we going to see a stop to these challenges that we're seeing? And this week, obviously, it's boiled over with a young Black woman being killed while sleeping in her bed, which she had nothing to do with the reason that the policeman barged into her home in the middle of the night while she was sleeping. We're talking about a 68-year-old Black woman who was attacked by policemen inside a Sam's Club because of a charge such as future theft. What are we talking about here? We're talking about George Floyd, a man who was handcuffed. My first question is, why is this man's face on the ground to begin with? If you're already handcuffed, why are you face down on the ground, let alone you have to have 3 policemen hold you down? It doesn't make any logical sense. And I think we as Americans, we need answers on what's going to happen. What is going to happen next? Okay, we're going to vote for you. Then what?
Okay, well, let me cut you off and ask you that. What is a congresswoman from Texas? Listen, you going into the Capitol Hill, your one vote of like around 500. I don't know whether you would agree with this assessment. This is how I feel. It's an extremely right-wing institution. Anybody who has a respect for life and human life seems to be an extreme minority. What does a congressman have the ability to affect in a positive way? Obviously, you can't upend the entire system by yourself because it's an interlocking chain of mayors and district attorneys and prosecutors and police chiefs.
That's correct.
So what do we get out of one congresswoman pushing the ball on these issues?
Well, this is what I tell my district all the time, that you don't get change because, somebody's running for office. And you don't get change because someone has a good message. You don't even get change because they did a really good job and ran a good campaign. The only way you get change is when people of the community, of the city, of the district, of the state come together and demand change. And we have to come together and demand change because, like you pointed out, it is one person representing one district out of 435 districts across the entire country. So it is important for people to understand that we have to come together. And that's what we're seeing, by the way. We are seeing today, even in Austin, Texas, people are out there protesting because why? They don't see this change. It is important for not just one congressperson running for office, but every congressman, and congresswoman and congressperson in Congress today to speak up and ask for action from what you just pointed out. Police unions across the country, police departments across the country, mayors across the country, district attorneys across the country. Every single person must take action. So what I wanted to see from police departments across the country is not how are you going to do crowd control, not, okay, let's, we saw one policeman joining in the walk. No, I want to see where is your de-escalation plan. I want to see how are you going to prevent policemen from acting the way that they do. How are we going to hold them accountable? That's what we need to see. And so we're only one voice, but it is important for the entire country to come together and demand the change and see actual action.
In your personal opinion, how much of this is economic in nature? I know that the last time you came on our show, we talked a lot about UBI. We talked a lot about giving people direct assistance during a unprecedented, once in a century kind of national emergency. Nothing has happened in Congress. Congress has just totally failed people like they tend to do. And it's been a couple of months. People are worried about their rent, about their food. How do you think that impacts people like feeling like they have nothing to lose? Because I feel like I'm surrounded by people in my own city. I'm in Atlanta. We were on the national news for good reason. And I'm surrounded by people in my city that have nothing to lose at this point because it's hot, rent's due, and people just have less and less.
Well, look, we know that more than 36 million people don't have a job today. And when you don't have a job, most of those people who didn't already have any kind of healthcare coverage now have zero healthcare coverage. We also know that Black people are dying at almost twice the rate from coronavirus than is represented by their population percentage in this country. We know that there is an economic element to this where they are caught in the lowest wage jobs in our country. So is there an economic aspect to it? Of course there is. But there is also a race aspect to this. You cannot address our justice system until you recognize the fact that unarmed Black men get shot and get killed to death at twice the rate of the population percentage that they represent in this country. That's just fact. Race has to be an element of a justice solution and an economic solution and a healthcare solution and a job solution. It has to be part of every single one of them. And that's what I would propose, and that's what we've been proposing in our campaign, to make that an element. Whether it comes to healthcare, we're saying, hey, we actually need to invest money into Black healthcare. Some of the reasons that why, for example, if you have clinical trials, a lot of times Black people are not part of those. There is no specific amount of funding that is put into research into healthcare for Black people. There is no special program to try to understand why is it that we have so many people stuck in low wage jobs that also happen to be Black Americans. Why is it that we have so many Black Americans that don't have access to, that don't have any kind of healthcare coverage, have no access to healthcare today? And what about the fact that they are more susceptible to something like a pandemic like this because of underlying health conditions, which have been worsened decade over decade over decade because they've never been able to go to a doctor on a timely fashion, because they can't address the medical health challenges that they have on a regular basis because they have no health coverage, period. So that has to be a solution. We have to have real solutions. But you know what? The time for all of this talk is over. It is time for mayors across this country. It is time for district attorneys across this country. And it is time for state governments, federal governments to say, enough is enough. We have a problem in this country. Look at policing across the entire world. Where else do you see people suffocated to death on the side of the road after they have been handcuffed? Show me one country where you see this on a regular basis that you see happening to Black Americans in this country.
I could name some countries, but they are very dark places that Americans would not be comfortable being compared to.
Yeah, you don't want to know what category this puts us in, folks. It's not a good one.
It's not a good category to be in. I feel like there's also been maybe some disconnects with the way that people have thought about this. What do you say to people who see the expressions of rage on the part of citizens? There's been a lot of property damage. There have not been, massacres. There hasn't been mass scale violence of civilian on civilian. But there has been property damage. There's been looting. To what degree, and maybe I'm putting you in a tough spot, to what degree should that stuff be overlooked by mayors? And to what degree is maybe the criminal justice aspect of the actual police officers that committed these acts, is that something that should be taken more seriously or less seriously? Which should we do, and in what order? I know that sounds like a weird open-ended question, but just tell me your general thoughts on how disturbed are you at the level and amount of violence you've seen so far?
Look, for the past 2 days, we have had protesting right here in Austin, Texas, and majority of the protests, both here and across the country, have been peaceful in nature. There are very, very few people that are advocating for rioting. Most people, including the mother of a person that was killed here right in Austin, in fact, led with a message saying, please do not commit any kind of violence and rioting in the name of my son. And his name is Ramos. His last name is Ramos. That was her message. So that is the overwhelming, overarching message. Now, are there groups that are taking advantage of this pain that the American people are feeling right now? Yes. Do we know who they are? We don't know right now. We don't know which these groups are. My point is very simple. The American people are in an extreme amount of pain. And even in this pandemic, so many people have come out. And today in Austin, Texas, people came out with their children. They wouldn't have come out with their children if they thought there was going to be rioting or they had an intent for some sort of violent action. They're out here peacefully asking our government, our elected officials, you need to take action now. The time is now. You've got to do it now. And I think this is the most important message that I'm hearing. I think we need to see action. Look, it's been what now? 6 days since George Floyd's video came out. And on the 6th day, if this was the other way around, if there were 3 black men holding down a white person, if there was another person standing guard doing nothing, 3 other people, human beings doing absolutely nothing to stop the death of one man.
There wouldn't need to be a riot. There wouldn't need to be any kind of protest.
And do you think that 3 of the 4 officers today are still free at home, as far as I know?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Correct.
At home. So it's okay for you to stand there and watch a guy die in front of you and be free. Do you think that there's any other circumstance in our country even where we would see that if they were not policemen?
Absolutely. And on video, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
It kind of baffles me that nobody thinks that these protests would be calmed by simply arresting these men that perpetrated this act and just giving them the barest admission into the criminal justice system as some sort of acknowledgement that obviously something criminal or even worthy of trial or worthy of arrest has gone on. Instead, they just completely have their freedom. It's completely baffling to me, and it's hard to put a grip on how to deal with that kind of thing.
It really is. And the other thing is, it doesn't matter what you're guilty of at this point. When you are handcuffed, when both your hands are behind your back, you're handcuffed, you are already restrained. What is a person doing on their face when that's already happened? How is it possible that they need any more restraint after that?
There's a rumor that those 2 men knew each other and that they worked together. So it's possible that there was a personal grudge. We also know that this person was involved in a number of violent incidents before the George Floyd incident. So
yes,
I will keep saying forever that Derek Chauvin is a serial killer, folks.
And not only that, I think there are complaints against some of the other officers as well.
Yeah.
Correct.
And this is the thing that, when we wrote our Equal Justice for All law, proposal, one of the things we pointed out is that, policemen can go from city to city, from departments to departments. Even if they've been fired from one city, they can go to another city. That is a very common thing that's happening in our country today. There is no accountability whatsoever. So we were proposing liability insurance so that if you did go to another city and you were hired, they would have to look into your background before providing you with liability insurance. And if you had this history of misconduct, of complaints against you, then it would make these police departments think twice before they hired you. And not to mention, every time a policeman does something wrong, guess who picks up that tab? When someone is wrongfully killed, that tab is picked up by us, the taxpayers, and that policeman goes completely free. Even if they're fired from their own police department, can go to another state, another city, the next city over, and all of a sudden has a job and can repeat the same behavior that they did. And one thing for the American people to understand is one of the reasons why we see absolutely no change in police behavior is not only that they're not held accountable, but also that the accountability depends on precedent. And a lot of times when that complaints are filed against them or lawsuits are filed against them, what is cited is, well, in the past, we've never done this, so we can't all of a sudden do it now. And that has to change. And that can only change by policy. And it can only change when mayors and district attorneys and those people that are appointed into police chief, positions stand up and say, we can do better. We don't need to be doing these things, and we recognize this. And the American people today, by protesting across tens or hundreds of cities today, are telling you that. They are saying, take action. Take it now.
We've seen an explosion of violence this week, and just from what I've seen, it's mostly been perpetrated and escalated by the police. So what can people do right now to discourage these kinds of things from happening? I just literally, before we went on air, I saw a couple of pictures of a Seattle Police Department officer like literally macing a kid and walking off. I think they were just hitting a crowd and the kid was in the crowd. I'm not sure, but I was just like extremely disturbed. And I know in Atlanta, every single report I've gotten, and this is not from like left-wing sources, these are just from like people who are like pretty moderate and were just there in the crowd, was that the Atlanta Police Department and the National Guard escalated at every possible circumstance. What do you think can be done like this week to improve that situation? What can be done that's not already being done? We don't have like all the levels of power here.
Here's the thing. Every single person in your city can call the mayor and they can say, look, you're going to be out for election. If it's not today, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we're not going to vote for you if you don't pick up the phone and do something and have a conversation with your police chief. That is what we can do. If every single person in this city today sent an email or a letter or called their mayor, the person who's appointing the police chief, and asked them to take action today, we would have some impact. Because these people who are in these positions care about one thing and one thing only, and that is coming back, being reelected into the positions they already hold. So if you want to hold your position, you should be taking action and taking it right now. And I call on every single police department. And if you are someone who believes in serving the American people and you're in the police department, you should be out there making a big statement and coming out and making a change in your departments immediately, not only vocally, but in action as well.
And what are those actions? I mean, what is the cornerstone of a equal justice program? I mean, you're in Austin, so can you just tell us how things have been there and what improvements you think should be made and how amenable police unions have been to those actions that you're talking about?
Look, in Austin, we've had multiple cases of Black men being detained, being restrained with extreme amount of force. We had a gentleman, his last name is Ramos, who was shot and killed by the police. And as far as my understanding goes, that he was unarmed. These things are not specific to Austin or Minneapolis or any city in this country. These things are across police departments, and that is because the agenda of the police department is not to de-escalate. It's the other way around. The first thing that every single police department and police unions need to look at is the way they come at people, the way they restrain them. The de-escalation has to be the forefront of their focus. Any kind of scenario, that should be their focus. That is not the focus today. And they have way too much gear on them that they can use on people in a very aggressive manner that's completely unnecessary. In fact, the United States military has more strict guidelines in a war zone that they have to go by than our policemen and our neighbors. Just let that sink in for a second.
It's baffling. Listen, so you have an election coming up. Obviously, I'm sure that you were planning on your attention being elsewhere over this weekend, but like part of holding offices, things change week to week. And one week you're thinking about like COVID, and 1 week you're talking about Medicare, and 1 week you're talking about this. So this is a really big day for your campaign. Can you talk about why it's an important day and what people can do to help you?
So look, we are in a runoff, and most people are not aware of a runoff, or they're not aware what even a runoff is. Texas is an extremely growing state. Our two counties have a lot of new population that have moved in. Not everybody is aware of a runoff. People don't understand how important it is to put forth the strongest candidate to go up against a 9-term Trump-endorsed GOP representative. You have to put the person that's going to do the work. And our campaign has shown that we can do the work. And I want to give you 3 reasons why we're in the best position to flip this district blue. Number 1, there are 2 counties in our district, Williamson County and Bell County. In 2018, Williamson County went Democratic. It already went blue. And since then, we had 50,000 more people move into this district that tend to lean blue. You know, younger families with children that tend to vote Democratic. Williamson County will probably glow blue. It's never going back red again. The challenge that we have is to close the gap of 2.9% in Bell County. Now, what most people in this district and around the country don't know is that Bell County is a majority Black Americans, Latino and Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans, majority. And our campaign in a 6-way ballot and a 5-way race won Bell County. And we won Bell County through outreach into these communities that have been completely ignored by 9-term John Carter. That's how we did it. We are in the strongest position. Number 2, we have built a coalition of Democrats. Our campaign has the endorsement of support of all the other primary candidates that didn't make it to the runoff. So Eric Hankey, Dan Janjigian, and Tammy Young have all endorsed our campaign. And there's a reason for that. Because imagine running for Congress and then losing. That's a lot of work. It's a tough thing to do. But they understand how important it is for us to have a change in representation. And many of them are quite moderate. So we have the ability to bring together independents, moderates, and strong Democrats, left Democrats, all together into our campaign. That's what we're doing in this community. And we're offering real solutions, not just, justice system solutions, but economic solutions, real pay for all, healthcare for all, education for all. And these target the bread and butter issues that every single person in our district is facing today. That's why it's so important for you. First of all, come out and vote, because early voting, mail-in voting for people over 65 and people who are disabled who vote by mail in this district, they will start getting their ballots in the next week or so. In the next 2 weeks, they'll start hitting mailboxes. We need your help. We need to help. We need your help to phone bank these folks, because we don't have the ability to go door to door like we did before the COVID and the coronavirus and the pandemic hit our country as a whole. So we could really use your help. And number 2, we are just under $2,000 away from hitting our goal this week, May 31st, midnight at 11 p.m. So even if you have $3.10 to give to our campaign, or if you can do a little bit more, we can get there. We can absolutely do this, and we can reach every single voter. That's what we need help with. Early voting starts June 29th, those people that will go in person and vote, and July 14th is election day. But people will be voting across the entire 6 weeks starting next week. So we could really use your help, both phone banking for us, and of course, every single dollar counts. And there is no campaign across the entire country that's got a great return on investment that you would have with our campaign.
I just want to say, folks, I know it's hard right now to feel like electoralism matters in some ways. When you're faced with something like this, it sort of seems to throw all the other priorities out the window. And to an extent, it should. But if you want to have a better chance of a smoother, easier change, if you want these changes that you have in mind, whether it's, this kind of reform or this kind of abolition or this or that, changes to our law enforcement system, it's going to be a lot easier to have candidates like Donna in office, someone who believes that the activism on the outside is important, than people who don't think that activism matters, like a lot of our elected representatives now. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us today, Donna Imam. This has been a pleasure. And, I hope that people out there are, feeling something after watching this.
Thank you so much, guys. Kennedy, Brandon, I really appreciate you guys having me on. And again, my hope for the future is that we take the strength of our protests and we take them to action, because that's what America needs right now. That's what we need, and that's what we want.
Yeah, all right, Donna. Thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll see you again before the election. I know it's a very busy time, and you're on a very tight and strictly organized schedule. I'm a little baffled by how you find time to do anything, but we do hope to see you again. We are huge fans of yours, and we like the time we spend together.
Thank you so much. You guys have a
Absolutely.
great weekend.
Absolutely, you too.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
All right, that's it, everybody. We will talk to y'all Monday. 4 p.m. Eastern, which is like 3 Central. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about current events. We also have a podcast. That next episode is Monday, and it's with the developers of Tonight We Riot, which is a very cool video game. You can learn more about the process and getting involved in game making and all that good stuff tomorrow. So thank you for watching, and have a good one. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.